Because now we're bigger in the frame, but we didn't cut out the background. You
Okay,
know?
let's see.
How are you gonna tell?
Okay.
Excuse me. I feel like we're also closer to each other now.
Oh, am I supposed to say something?
No, but
My boobs up above?
yeah. I mean, you can't really see them, so I don't really know what I'm looking
Good.
at.
I didn't. Good. Okay. No, I just didn't want to be like. Oh my God! It's Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th. It's good. Friday the 13th is always lucky for me.
Yeah.
It's like
My mom was born on a Friday the 13th.
hi.
I feel like we should do a couple of intros.
Okay. Hi. Cheers.
No, start over.
So stupid. Hey, what's
Hey.
up? No.
Hi.
Hi.
Cheers.
Cheers. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Okay, so welcome to the latest entry in the Strange Ways vlog. Something new is I'm going to be interviewing someone, my good friend Cadah. She runs Poor George in Cold Spring, and I had just gone there to celebrate her anniversary. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and about business and about running a store and why we're friends and how we like each other a lot and whatever else comes up. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Poor George and what your store's about?
Hey, I'm Cadah. So I own Poor George. It's a lifestyle boutique in the Hudson Valley. We specialize in women-led businesses and brands and different creative vendors. But I like to say we're the coolest shop on Main Street.
She says it on her Instagram.
Yes. So if you come to Cold Spring, definitely come visit us.
Yes, you should. We talk about business a lot because that is how we met.
Yes.
I don't really remember all this, but you seem to remember more than I do. But I know that we worked. I know that we worked together at the beginning, and obviously I know that when I was starting, you were someone that I always talked about things. But how did we actually meet?
I think I made you be my friend.
Yeah.
Someone I knew shared your pop-up when you were in like an ATM vestibule.
I was in a literal like 7-foot ATM vestibule in downtown New Haven, which was really cool. I got to do it for free. The city offered it, and when I didn't have a store, you could basically sit up there and sell. But I was standing in an ATM, old one.
She was complaining that you weren't open the hours that you said you were going to be. So then I was like, who's this? And then I clicked through and I was like, oh shit, this is awesome stuff. And then you quickly were opening the space in Westville, right?
Yeah, I was probably doing a extended pop-up.
Oh, okay.
Because I was very nervous about renting out a space or signing a lease. And so I was doing a bunch of little pop-ups around town. And then eventually the Westville one was like a 2-month-long one. And then it did
that
well.
Was a pop-up?
It was a spring pop-up, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Because it was empty, but again, I was really nervous about signing a lease. Most landlords want you to do like a 3 to 5 year lease, and I was like, I don't know if I can do that. I was just in an ATM vestibule for free. I don't know if it's gonna work out.
Humble beginnings.
Yeah. So I was like, I will do this for a couple months, which again I think was helped by the city. And that did work out, and then I signed a lease. So
okay, that's when I think I met you in there,
okay.
and I just introduced myself because I followed you on Instagram when Instagram was actually useful.
Just talking about that,
yeah. And then you followed back, and so then when I went in, I introduced myself, and I was like, "Oh, we follow each other," and you were just like,
I was like, "Do we? Do we?"
You're like, So
I have a really bad memory.
Really bad.
It's not that I'm a dick.
No, I just have
remember.
Way too good of a memory.
Okay,
too.
maybe that's it. I'll use that too.
I care too much. Yeah, and so then I just introduced myself, and we got to talking, and I started in 2013 as a vintage pop-up, and I used to sell at the Brooklyn Flea every weekend, and I think it was I used to be the merchandiser at Urban Outfitters, and I think it was post my time there, and I had done pop-ups with in different Urban Outfitters stores, so I was trying to do something more locally, and I think you and I just got to talking.
Yeah. Well, I was new to New Haven. I didn't know many people.
And I'm born and raised. Stupid.
Born and raised.
I'm from Brantford, which is a couple towns over, and I went to school here in New Haven, and I was working at Toad's Place, and so
Toad's Place.
Yeah, Toad's Place. Yeah, so I was very familiar with New Haven too. So
Yeah.
I think that was appealing to you.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't trying to like use you or something.
No,
I
that
just
sounds weird. That sounded
I
weird.
just didn't know a lot of people.
Yes.
And
And I
the
was
way I met
overly friendly.
the way I met a lot of people too was other business owners.
Yeah.
And you were actually like a younger, like entrepreneurial person that I felt like we were doing something similar. So it was really cool.
Similar values and
yeah.
yeah.
I ended up opening my store in Westville. Now it's in New Haven, which is Westville's New Haven. But anyways, I'm now downtown. And then I know you were looking for spaces in a lot of different places, including New Haven.
Yep.
But you ended up in Cold Spring. So why did you end up there? Because when you first told me about it, I was like, I don't even know what this place is.
It was quite the leap. And I was really interested in opening New Haven though, but I wasn't getting any responses from landlords or
Yep.
Yep. They just weren't. Yeah, I was too small. They wanted nothing to do with me. But one of my coworkers lived on the Connecticut-New York border and told me about this shop called Old Souls in Cold Spring, New York, and it's a super cute town. And Old Souls does it right. Shout out to them. And he was like, "You have to go check it out. You have to go see Cold Spring."
Okay.
So I went there, and I was like, immediately yes. I really wanted to open somewhere where I wasn't in charge of marketing like trying to entice foot traffic in.
Yeah, you just want to be somewhere where people are going to naturally be.
Yeah, and but also I was fairly conscious about not stepping on other people's toes if someone was already doing what I wanted to do there, and it was still mostly vintage at that time. I had plans to bring in complementary newer brands.
Your store was mostly vintage.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying. But I wanted to have like complementary newer brands with it as well. And then so that I want to say was like 2015, 2016. And I didn't end up opening there until 2018. There were never any open storefronts. And I would go back like once a quarter, basically, just to check it out. And finally, in March of 2018, March? Yeah, it was March of 2018. And I was like, okay, one more time. I would really want to be open before the summer, before May, really ideally. I'm just going to go check it out one more time, talk to the landlord, and it was available. And I ended up applying for a personal loan instead of a business loan.
Okay.
I love talking finances, so sorry if this bores people. But I had a higher credit score, and it's easier to get a personal loan versus for business loan, they want all kinds, like a whole business plan.
Right.
And I was just like, I got this.
This is also why I talked to Cadah, because she knows business and I don't know anything about it. I don't know how I've done business this long. So I asked Cadah a lot of business questions.
And I officially opened my doors May 9th.
Okay.
2018.
That sounds about the right timeline. Like I remember when I had to build out my store. It's like you want to be super fast, but it can't be like 2 weeks. Instead of like a little over a month. Is that what you said? Like 6 weeks?
Yeah. But after being in the space for a full year, I moved on to a second location.
And then moved on to a third location.
Yeah.
Which is where we were celebrating. Now it's probably been like a week or two, but you were celebrating your 1 year in your bigger space.
Yes, which is 6 times the size of my first space.
Yeah. I mean, it's the first time I got to see it, which is why I really wanted to go to this party too. I want to say, like, you know, experiencing Cold Spring also through you being there. I don't know if I would visit there, honestly, just because I'm like not super close to it. But going there and visiting your stores as they've progressed, and then seeing how the town's grown too. Like it was such a good call for you to be there.
Yeah.
And even just walking around this last time there, it's just always something new going on. There's always, I feel like, more people. I mean, seeing your space grow, it's cool. I can't think of a better word.
On Main Street.
Yeah, there you go.
Duh. Cold Spring's like the #1 day trip destination for people who live in the city.
Yeah, that's what I didn't know. And you definitely get that customer that knows what you're trying to do, as well as the locals. I feel like understand, you know, as well what your store's about.
They're all like ex-city people. Most of them still work there.
Yeah,
doing commuting. So,
and that's why I didn't know from not being in the area. All right, so you just celebrated your anniversary, as we talked about, and your store is now bigger, and you kind of went through your process of how you started and how you've now grown to this space. How do you feel Port George has evolved or changed or adjusted, you know, in these so many years?
One of the things that I was most excited about was to be able to have an event space. My shop prior, like I had that filled to the brim of stuff, so there was absolutely no room to like host anything.
You're really involved in, I feel like, the community now. Like you are a part of it.
I try. Still living in Connecticut and commuting to the Hudson Valley has.
I don't want you to move to Cold Springs.
I am so torn. I just want, like, remember how we were talking how I would just like, if I lived here, we would just like be at each other's houses.
Yeah. It's probably good you don't live here because we wouldn't get anything done.
But yeah, so having that commute has made me feel like I kind of have like, I'm straddling a couple of different communities. So I felt like I missed out on a lot, but now I'm less than an hour away. And since then, and then being in the bigger space and having a better offering for the locals, I feel, like you said, more like cemented in as part of the community now.
Yeah. But you must also just have more space for the product and like the shoppers and the customers. I mean, why did you want a bigger space besides the event space?
Honestly, to have more fitting rooms.
Okay.
I had two fitting rooms, and they would back up all the time, and it was like really tight in there because I just packed it with product, and it would be kind of embarrassing, like trying to be like, excuse me, sorry. Yeah. So I have 3 fitting rooms now. They don't get backed up. There's actually space. You can spread out and see everything now.
Yeah.
It really didn't have to increase my inventory levels all that much to open. I now have like a full denim bar offering.
You just can now see everything.
You can just, and like not have like 5 people on top of you.
Sorry, there's a denim bar. Sorry.
No, it's okay. So there's a denim bar. Like I have commissioned a local artist to build this big fixture in the front of the store.
It's really cool.
Yeah. And it's like modular, so I can change it up. So I can, it's so cool that people don't notice my fiddle leaf tree anymore. Yeah. That thing is like over 10 feet tall.
Well, when you got a big blue sculpture piece of art.
Yeah. And covered in really cool books. Yeah. And so I was able to expand just kind of organically once I was in there.
Yeah.
Just for a stronger offering for people.
Yeah. I would think that you just want more space to also yourself just breathe. I mean, your other space was merchandised really well and it didn't necessarily feel tight, but now being in the new space, it's like, oh, you can't go back.
Yeah. Oh God, no.
I know that like that happens with Strange Ways too, where we moved into a bigger spot and people are, one, shocked. They're like, how's your store so big now? And then 2, I'm like, how is it ever so small?
Right? Like, but I feel like you had to do that to know what you actually wanted. Like I could not have just opened up into this space.
Yeah.
I had to spend those years figuring it out.
And that's probably good, like advice or tip or anyone that's thinking about starting a store. It's like, it is good to start small. I mean, you don't want to overextend yourself or rent out a huge space they don't know how to fill and it just looks empty. You know, I think we both benefited from being in smaller spaces and having less expenses. And also it really does, like you said, make you think about, well, what's really important, what I want to carry in here versus let me just fill it up.
Yeah. Like you got to get to know customers more.
Yeah.
Listen to what they're asking for, and then they feel heard too.
Yeah. Cool. So when you first started and when I met you, your store was actually called Poor George Vintage, correct?
Yes.
And
my Etsy shop too.
Your Etsy shop, and that was like a big part of your focus. You've obviously grown beyond that. And when you moved to Cold Spring, did you drop vintage right away?
No, I still have vintage too.
No, I mean in the name.
Oh, sorry. In the name? Yeah, when I registered, I'm just Poor George LLC.
Okay, yeah. So it was why did you want to not focus on vintage as much? And I also want to ask this though, because now vintage I feel like is even more popular than when you started, which I find ironic. And I know you still have vintage, but like what kind of like how have you seen this sort of vintage interest evolve since you started as an old lady now?
Wow. Okay, I'm not in my 40s yet.
Well, I feel like 22-year-olds.
Oh my God.
Or 18-year-olds, like they're so into vintage now. And I'm like,
my like whole line was vintage, new, and handmade. So I knew I was always going to have another offering besides vintage.
Okay.
So it was easily like 60-40, 60 vintage, 40 new, like new accessories, new apparel, nice basics that like fed into the vintage really well. So you can pair it all back.
Fill it in, yeah.
And my vintage, I've always called it modern vintage.
Okay.
So it's stuff that you absorb right into your closet. It's not really specialty. I mean, you could buy a specialty piece and go for it with styling, but
it's not like costume or
no, it's like good sweaters, midi skirts, slip dresses, blazers. I've always had the men's vintage too, leathers, things like that. The smaller selection now, but each piece is sick. And what we have is a little bit more elevated.
Okay.
As far as like it's how rare it is, and I can be more selective.
Yeah.
But vintage now. So I really pulled back on vintage with the pandemic.
Okay.
It was hard to go sourcing. It
Yeah.
was kind of sus. So I started allotting more of my buying budget to new. But vintage now is a little hard for me because it's like my high school years. It's
Yeah.
millennial fashion,
Hmm.
which wasn't good then, and it's really hard to pull off now. But like I see like Instagram footage of like FIT students like walking to class, and they're killing it.
Yeah.
But it's just like I can't wrap my head around styling that.
Yeah. Like, do people though come in and like ask for more vintage? Like, I just feel like that interest has grown. I mean, around here in New Haven, there's not a lot of retail opening, and if there is, I think there's a vintage store on this side of me and a vintage store on that side of me. Granted, they have different audiences, but I'm like personally intrigued by this idea because like I'm wearing a vintage shirt. I think you got me this.
Oh yeah, I bought you that.
But this would be like $7 when I was in like high school or
Yeah.
college, and now I feel like it's gonna be like $70.
I'm also wearing a vintage shirt.
Yeah, and I'm like, I get it, it's cool, but it didn't used to be as cool as it was. And so if anything, I would feel like now you might have more pressure to carry more vintage, but you're keeping it very selective and like still good pieces that fit the shop and that aren't just maybe found everywhere or something. Or because do you have like a lot of graphic tees and things? I can only think about that too.
I still mostly keep on like Harley tees or like beer tees. And like I mean those are getting harder and harder to find.
Yeah.
And so I'm not interested in really selling a lot of vintage that's like $100 and up.
Yeah.
So it's my price point is still pretty low.
Do you have any explanation why kids, I will say, are nuts over 90s vintage fashion? I do have a theory.
My theory would be that they weren't alive for it.
Well, they weren't alive for it, but here's the thing. When we were going to thrift stores or vintage stores, well, at least I did when I was in high school, it was stuff from the 70s.
Yeah.
No one wants to wear stuff from the 70s unless it's a costume, unless it's Halloween. Maybe you could find something that you could adjust. But now it's like, oh, the stuff in the 90s just kind of like the stuff we're still wearing now. Like, granted, I'm sure some of the cuts are different, but like I just revert back to like graphic tees where I'm like, people will make new graphic tees that look old.
Yeah.
And so they're like, well, I just want an old graphic tee. It's more unique. And that's where I think the style is still relevant from 20 years ago, whereas when we were younger, 20 years ago style is like not relevant anymore.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's what I think about.
I mean, I saw a reel of a girl pitching a fit that she bought a Nirvana tee at a store for like $40, and she went into a vintage store and it had the exact same Nirvana tee graphic, and they were selling it for like $400, and she was like, the audacity. But like she couldn't wrap her head around that. Like that was an actual.
It was like from that time,
and how rare that was.
Yeah.
As far as like you said, kids going wild for a vintage, I think the sustainability of it.
Yeah.
I think the generation like Gen Z, I guess if you will.
Yeah.
Have a huge appreciation for secondhand.
Do they though? Because what's up with Temu and all that
oh my God,
stuff?
It's weird
Shine, like Sheen, Shan.
I can't even. Don't get me started on that.
Like that's what I mean. Like it's like okay, maybe I wonder if they just say that so they can like be like, yeah, I bought $100 blah blah blah, but it's because I like care about the environment. But then I'm like, did you just buy that thing off Amazon though?
I think the people who appreciate vintage and secondhand kind of have a different value system.
Yeah. I mean, and you can balance it. I mean, I always say, we carry small artists, independent brands, and I would rather have like a t-shirt from a local comic book store than something else. But like, doesn't mean I'm never going to buy something from Adidas or Nike. It's like, you can't only have that stuff.
Right.
But I just know that, yes, maybe they care more, a younger generation cares more about sustainability, but then I also know there's a huge audience for fast fashion. So it's like, which is it? I guess both.
And I think the fast fashion stuff too, it's like the hauls and the internet of it all.
Yeah.
And the whole being fast, it's like, and like Temu and Shein they have stuff up as the trends are hitting. There's way more micro trends now.
Yeah. It's easier to get the trends out there and it's easier for them to die.